Don't move. Follow me. The boy's voice was barely louder than a whisper, yet something in its quiet urgency made Victor Langston stop cold in the middle of his own driveway. He had been walking toward the sleek town car waiting at the gate, briefcase in one hand and phone in the other, his mind already far ahead in a boardroom across the city. Now he stood perfectly still on the polished stone path, looking down at a young boy in a faded blue shirt who had appeared from behind the rose hedges, as though he had been waiting there for quite some time. "What did you say?" Victor asked. He recognized the boy, the housekeeper's son, around 10 years old. He had seen him a few times helping his mother carry laundry baskets across the back lawn, but they had never spoken directly. "Don't move," the boy repeated, even softer this time. "Please, sir, follow me. Don't let the man at the gate see you." Victor glanced toward the gate. His driver stood beside the town car, holding the rear door open, looking down at his phone. Nothing seemed wrong. The morning was bright, the sky clear, the engine humming softly the way it always did when the driver had been waiting a little while. "Son, I'm late for a meeting," Victor said, trying to keep his voice patient. "Whatever this is, can we talk about it later this evening?" The boy did not let go of his sleeve. His small fingers held on with surprising strength, and his eyes were not the eyes of a child playing a game. They were the eyes of someone who had not slept, eyes filled with a fear far too old for his years. "If you go to that car," the boy whispered, "you won't come back. I heard them say it last night in the kitchen. Please, sir." A cold dread crept through Victor, but he pushed it aside. He had built his entire life on logic, on numbers, on the discipline of never reacting to surprises. He was the founder of one of the largest private logistics firms on the East Coast. He did not change his plans because a child told him to, yet something about the way the boy clung to his sleeve made him look once more at the car by the gate. This time he looked carefully. The car was the same model, the same color, the same plate from this distance. The driver was the same height and build, wearing the same dark jacket. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for one detail. His regular driver, Derek, who had worked for him for several years, always wore a small silver ring on his left thumb, a gift from his late father. Derek never took it off, not even when he washed dishes or worked on his car. Victor had once teased him about it at a holiday party, and Derek had quietly shared the story behind it, leaving Victor slightly ashamed for having joked at all. The man at the gate was not wearing that ring. "How do you know what you heard?" Victor asked quietly, his eyes still on the driver. "How do you know it was about me?" "Because they said your name," the boy whispered. "Mr. Langston. They said it 3 times. And they said your wife had already paid them. Half already, half when it was done." Victor's chest locked for a long moment. He felt his lungs stop, then start again slowly, the way they always did when devastating news arrived in a meeting and he could not let anyone see it land. "Walk with me," he said quietly, slowly, toward the side of the house. "Don't run. Don't look at the gate." The boy nodded once and released his sleeve. Together they walked across the stone path, past the fountain Victor had paid more for than most people spend on a car, past the marble bench where his wife sometimes enjoyed her morning coffee, and around the corner of the house where a tall row of cypress trees hid them from the gate. When they were safely behind the trees, Victor knelt so his eyes were level with the boy's. "What's your name?" he asked. "Miles, sir. Miles." Victor nodded slowly, locking the name into the part of his mind where important things were kept. "Tell me everything. Slowly. Don't skip anything. Start from last night." Miles took a deep breath. His shoulders trembled, but his voice stayed steady. "My mom was making tea in the kitchen. It was late. I was supposed to be asleep, but I came down because I had forgotten my book. The lights were off, but I could hear voices on the back patio. 2 people, a woman and a man. The man wasn't from the house. I'd never heard his voice before. The woman was Mrs. Langston." Victor kept his face perfectly still. "She said," Miles continued, "everything is ready for the morning. She said the driver had been replaced. She said her husband would get in the car at the usual time and wouldn't notice anything because he never notices anything in the morning. He's always reading his phone. Miles paused. His eyes held something older than 10 years. And then she said that after today she would finally be free. Victor Langston stayed very still behind the cypress trees, listening to his own heartbeat thunder in his ears, feeling the entire foundation of his life shift beneath him like solid ground suddenly turning to quicksand. For a long moment, he did not speak. He remained crouched there, one hand resting on the cold stone of the garden wall, the other still gripping his briefcase, as though it were the only thing anchoring him to the world he had walked out of minutes earlier. The sound of the town car's engine drifted softly from the gate, patient, mechanical, indifferent. "Miles," he said quietly, "do you have anything else? Anything you can show me? A note, a picture, anything?" The boy hesitated. He looked down at his shoes, then reached into the front pocket of his shirt and pulled out a small black object. It was an old phone, the kind that had been New Year's earlier. Its cracked screen held together with clear tape along one corner. "My mom gave me this one when she got her new phone," Miles said. "It still records sound. I was scared, so I pressed the button. I held it near the door." Victor took the phone carefully, as though handling something fragile and dangerous at the same time. There was a single audio file saved from the night before, over 11 minutes long. "You recorded it," Victor said. "I didn't know what else to do, sir. I thought if I told my mom she would say I was dreaming. I thought if I told nobody, then nobody would believe me later." Victor nodded slowly. He pressed play. The first thing he heard was the soft sound of dishes settling in a sink, then the sliding noise of the patio door. Then came his wife's voice, calm, warm, the same tone she used at dinner parties, saying something he could not quite catch at first. He raised the volume. "It has to look ordinary. He has to walk to the car himself. If anything is forced, if anything looks wrong, the police will find it within a day. He has to get in willingly." Then a man's voice, deeper, slower, careful, the voice of someone reading from a list he had memorized. "He will. His usual time is the window. He never varies. He walks out. He opens his email. He gets in the car. The new driver knows the route. There's a place outside Hartwick where the road bends along the reservoir. The car will stop there. The rest happens after." A pause. A small sound that might have been ice in a glass. "And the policy?" the man asked. "It pays out after a waiting period," his wife answered. "Accidental death, double indemnity. The lawyers have already reviewed it. There is no contest because there is no other beneficiary. I am the only one. The house, the company shares. Everything moves through the trust to me. The board cannot stop it. They tried to add protections earlier, but he signed them away during the merger. He never read the third page." Victor closed his eyes. He remembered that day. He remembered signing a stack of documents at a hotel desk while a junior lawyer pointed at the lines. He remembered being told the third page was standard administrative language. Nothing to worry about. He remembered feeling tired and not asking. The recording continued. After the man's voice asked when everything would be settled, his wife replied, "A year, maybe longer. We do not appear in the same room for at least 18 months. We say nothing. We change nothing. Patience is what makes this work." The recording went on a little longer, but Victor stopped the playback. He did not need to hear the rest. He had heard enough to know that whatever life he had been living that morning had ended sometime during the night while he slept upstairs. He looked at Miles, who was watching him with the patient eyes of someone who had been waiting all morning to be believed. "Your mother," Victor said carefully. "Does she know you recorded this?" "No, sir." "Did she hear them too?" "I don't think so. She had the kitchen radio on. She was making tea. I think she heard nothing." "Good." Victor exhaled slowly. "I need you to keep it that way for now. Do you understand? Not because your mother would do anything wrong, but because the more people who know, the more people are in danger." Miles nodded. He had the kind of seriousness in his face that did not belong on a child. Victor slipped the old phone into the inside pocket of his jacket. Then he stood up slowly, brushed the dust from his trousers, and looked out through a gap in the cypress branches toward the front gate. The town car was still waiting. The driver had finished with his phone and was now looking toward the house, no longer relaxed, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, in the small way a man does when he has been told to wait for a specific reason and is beginning to wonder why he is still waiting. Victor took out his own phone and tapped a single name from his favorites. The line rang twice. "Victor, you should be in the car already. The Hartwick meeting." "Philip, I'm not going to Hartwick today. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it without telling anyone in the office, not the legal team, no one." There was a pause. Philip Grant had been his lawyer for nearly 2 decades, and he had only heard Victor speak in this exact tone twice before. Once during a difficult takeover battle years earlier, and once on the night his mother had passed away. "Tell me," Philip said.
"I need everything on my life insurance policy. Every change made in recent years, every signature, every adjustment to the beneficiary clause. And I need it as quickly as possible."
"Victor, what is happening?" Victor looked down at Miles, who was looking back up at him with those same steady eyes. "Something I should have noticed a long time ago," he said. Philip did not waste time with more questions. "I'll have it soon. Stay where you are," and ended the call. Victor stood behind the cypress trees, holding the silent phone. He could feel his own pulse in his fingertips. He had negotiated against governments. He had bought companies and sold them in the same week. He had walked into rooms full of people who wanted him to fail, and walked out with their signatures on his paper. None of it had prepared him for the simple act of standing a short distance from his own front door and not knowing who in his house wanted him alive. His phone rang. The screen lit up with a single word: Isabel. He almost did not answer. But he understood, in the same calm and distant way he had understood the recording, that not answering would tell her something. She would call the driver. The driver would walk up to the house. The plan would shift, and whatever small advantage he had right now would disappear into the morning air. He pressed the green button. "Isabel. Victor, where are you? The driver just texted me. He says he has been at the gate for quite a while now." Her voice was warm, patient, slightly amused, the way a wife sounds when her husband has forgotten where he put his keys again. "I came back inside," Victor said. "I forgot a folder for the meeting. I think I left it in the study." "Oh, do you want me to come help you find it?" "No. Stay where you are. I'll be out in a few minutes." "Hurry, darling. You know how traffic gets." "I know." He ended the call and looked down at Miles, who had not moved. "She is in the house?" Victor asked quietly. "She was on the back patio a short while ago," Miles said. "When I saw your car pulling around to the front, I came to find you. I did not see where she went after." Victor nodded slowly. He thought for a moment. "Miles," he said, "I need to see her one more time. I need to see her with my own eyes before I do anything else. Do you understand why?" The boy thought about it, then he nodded. "Because if you don't see her," he said, "you might still believe she didn't do it." Victor looked at him for a long second. He realized that this child in a faded blue shirt with a cracked phone in his pocket had just described the exact shape of his hope, in fewer words than he himself could have found. "Yes," Victor said. "Exactly." They moved together along the back of the house, staying close to the wall, ducking under the low windows. Victor had not crouched like this since he was a boy himself. He was surprised at how easily his body remembered. They reached the corner of the south wing. From there, through a screen of climbing jasmine, they could see the back patio, the long stretch of lawn that led to the gardener's shed, and the white iron table where Isabel sometimes had her morning coffee. She was there. She was not alone. The man sitting across from her was the man whose voice had been on the recording. Victor knew it before he could explain how. He was tall and lean, somewhere in his early 40s, with the kind of carefully kept hair that men have when they spend more time on their appearance than they admit. He wore a dark gray jacket over a black shirt, and his hands rested on the table near hers. Not touching, but close enough that anyone watching would understand. Isabel was smiling. She was wearing the light blue dress Victor had bought her in Florence some summers ago. She had told him at the time that she would save it for something special. The man said something Victor could not hear. Isabel laughed softly and reached across the table, laying her hand on top of his. "By tonight," she said, just loud enough to carry across the lawn, "this will all be over." Victor did not move. He did not feel anger. He did not feel grief. He felt something stranger, something that didn't have a name. It was like watching a photograph of himself slowly catch fire from the corner inward. The man lifted her hand and kissed the inside of her wrist. Then he said, "We begin." Victor turned away from the screen of jasmine. He looked down at Miles, who had also seen it, who had also heard it, and whose small face had gone very quiet. "Come with me," Victor said. They walked together back along the wall, around the corner and through the side door that led into the laundry room. Victor knew this part of the house only vaguely. He had spent many years living here and could not have told anyone before this morning what the laundry room looked like. He found this fact almost funny in the cold, distant way he was finding many things funny right now. He took out his phone again and tapped a different name. "Derek," he said when the line picked up. "I need you to listen carefully and not ask questions yet. Are you at home?" "Yes, sir, I'm off today. You told me recently the company was sending a car from a different service, because mine was in for service. I figured you got the dates mixed up, but I didn't want to bother you. Mr. Langston, is something wrong?" Victor closed his eyes for a brief moment. There it was. The lie had been planted recently by someone who had access to his schedule, his phone, and his trust. "Derek," he said, "your car is not in for service, is it?" "No, sir, it's in my driveway right now." "I thought so." Victor exhaled slowly. "I need you to drive over here. Park 1 street away. Do not come up to the gate. I will call you again in a few minutes and tell you what to do next." He ended the call and stood very still in the laundry room. Through a small window above the dryer, he could just see the corner of the front gate. The town car was still there. The fake driver was still standing beside it, waiting for a man he believed would walk out, get inside, and not see his own home again. Victor turned to Miles. The boy was standing near a stack of folded towels, his small back pressed against the wall, watching him. "Miles," Victor said softly, "I need you to do something very important, and I need you to do it exactly the way I tell you. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Go to your mother. Tell her you are not feeling well. Tell her your stomach hurts and that you want to lie down. Do not lie about anything else. Just that. Then stay in your room until I come and find you. If anyone at all, comes and asks where I am or what I am doing today, you say you have not seen me since breakfast. Can you do that?" Miles thought about it, then he nodded. "Yes, I can do that." "Good." Victor knelt down again so that his eyes were level with the boy's. "Listen to me. What you did this morning was the bravest thing I have ever seen anyone do. I want you to remember that. Whatever happens in the next few hours, whatever you hear, whatever you see, I want you to remember that you saved a man's life today and that nothing that happens after this changes that fact. Do you understand?" The boy's eyes were very wide and very still. "Yes, sir." "Good, go." Miles turned and walked out of the laundry room. Victor heard the soft sound of his shoes on the tile, then on the wooden floor of the hallway. Then nothing. He stayed where he was for a long moment, listening to the house. It was strange how a house could feel familiar for many years and then, in the space of a single morning, feel like the inside of a stranger's body. Then he straightened his tie, picked up his briefcase, and walked out of the laundry room. He did not go to the front door. He went to his study first because that was where the missing folder was supposed to be. He stood in the study for a brief moment, opened and closed a drawer, walked to the bookshelf, walked back. He was setting a small piece of evidence in his own mind, the way a chess player places a piece without yet knowing how he will use it. He did not yet know who in this house was watching, but he wanted there to be a trail of him, doing exactly what he had said on the phone. Then he walked to the front foyer. Isabel was already there. She had come in from the patio and was standing by the long mirror, adjusting an earring. She turned when she heard him. "There you are," she said warmly. "Did you find it?" For one long second, Victor looked at her. He looked at the woman he had married in Small Chapel years ago, the woman who had cried during his mother's funeral, the woman who had once held his hand in a hospital waiting room for hours without letting go. He looked at her and saw beneath the soft and familiar smile the cool calculation of a person measuring whether a problem had been solved. He had spent his career reading faces across boardroom tables. He could not understand how he had never read this one. "I found it," he said. He held up the folder he had picked off his desk in the study. It contained nothing important, just printed copies of a quarterly forecast that had already been emailed days earlier. But Isabel did not know that, and she nodded. "Good," she said. "Now go. You'll be lucky to make it on time." "I know." He took a small step closer to her, the way a husband does when he is about to leave for the day. He kissed her on the cheek lightly, just below the ear. Her perfume was the same one she had worn for years. He had bought her the last few bottles himself. "I love you," she said. He did not answer. He could not. He simply smiled, the small, private smile he had used 1,000 times before, and turned toward the door. He walked out onto the front steps. The town car was a short distance away. The fake driver had straightened the moment he saw the door open and was now standing beside the rear door with one hand on the handle. Victor walked down the steps slowly, looking at his phone the way he always did in the morning. He scrolled through emails he was not reading. He did this for the length of the path. He did this until he was perhaps halfway to the car, and then, without breaking his pace, without looking up, he changed direction slightly. Just enough to pass the car and continue toward the small pedestrian gate on the far side of the driveway. The fake driver hesitated. Victor could feel it without looking. The man had been told exactly what would happen. The man had been told that Victor would walk to the car without looking, would get in without looking, would close the door without looking. The man had not been told what to do if Victor walked past him. "Mr. Langston," the driver said. Victor kept walking. He raised the phone slightly to his ear as if taking a call and said in a clear, ordinary voice, "Yes, I'm walking out now. No, I'll meet you at the corner. The driveway is blocked." He pushed open the pedestrian gate and stepped out onto the street. The town car did not follow. It could not. The driver had no instructions for this. Victor walked a short distance down the sidewalk, turned the corner, and saw Derek's silver sedan idling against the curb exactly where he had been told to wait. Derek had been Victor's driver for several years. In that time he had seen Victor tired, angry, distracted, and on a few occasions slightly affected after a difficult quarterly review. He had never seen him look the way he looked now, walking down the sidewalk with his briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other, his face composed in a way that did not match anything happening around him. Victor opened the passenger door and got in. He did not sit in the back. "Drive," he said. "Anywhere. Not toward the office, not toward the airport, just drive." Derek pulled away from the curb. He waited until they were a couple of blocks from the house before he spoke. "Mr. Langston, you want to tell me what is happening?" "I will. But first I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. Recently, when you got the message about your car being in for service, who told you?" Derek thought for a moment. It was a text from the company dispatcher. It came through the normal channel. "Did you call to confirm?" "No, sir. I didn't think to. The message had the right format. It came from the right number. It said you'd be using a different service for a while and that I should take paid leave. I figured the company was switching providers again. They do that sometimes." Victor nodded slowly. "Derek, that message did not come from the dispatcher. It was made to look like it did. Someone has been planning this for some time, and whoever it was had access to my schedule. your number, and the company's communication formats. Derek's hands tightened on the wheel. He did not ask for more. He did not need to. He had been driving wealthy men long enough to understand what kinds of plans took time to set up. "Where do you want me to go?" he said quietly. "There is a coffee shop on Pierce Street, the one with the green awning. Park behind it. My lawyer is meeting us there." They drove the rest of the way in silence. Victor watched the city slide past the window and thought about how strange it was that everything outside the car looked exactly the same as it had the day before. Mothers were pushing strollers. A man was unlocking the front door of a hardware store. A delivery truck was double parked beside a bakery. None of it knew that a man had almost disappeared from the world that morning. None of it would have noticed if he had. Philip Grant was already at the coffee shop when they arrived. He was sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees and a leather folder. Dressed in the same plain dark suit he wore to every meeting, whether it cost little or a great deal. He stood when Victor walked in, and the 2 of them shook hands in the careful way of men who had known each other long enough to skip the rest. Derek stayed by the door, his back to the room, watching the street. Victor sat down. Philip slid one of the coffees across the table. "Tell me," Philip said. Victor told him. He told him in the same flat, efficient voice he used when reporting losses to a board. He left nothing out. He told him about Miles, about the recording, about the patio, about the dress from Florence, about the man with the carefully kept hair, about the fake driver, about Derek's text message. He spoke for a long while without stopping. Philip did not interrupt once. He listened the way good lawyers listen, which is to say he wrote nothing down but missed nothing. When Victor finished, Philip took a long sip of his coffee. "All right," he said. "I have the insurance information. I had it quickly. I have not slept much in nearly 2 decades, and I do not intend to start today." He opened the leather folder and laid 3 printed pages on the table. "Your policy," he said, "was issued many years ago. Original coverage several $1 million. Standard for a man in your position at the time. It has been adjusted twice. The first adjustment was after the company went public. Coverage was raised substantially. That adjustment was routine. I was in the room when you signed it." He tapped the 3rd page. "The second adjustment was more recent. The coverage was raised to $35 million. An accidental death rider was added, which doubles the payout to $70 million under specific circumstances. The beneficiary clause was simplified. All conditional language was removed. Isabel is now the sole beneficiary with no contestable provisions, no waiting period, no exclusions." Victor stared at the page. He could see his own signature at the bottom. He recognized the shape of it. He recognized the small curl he always put at the end of the second letter of his last name. He did not remember signing it. "This is mine," he said quietly, "but I do not remember this." "I expected that," Philip said. The signature was witnessed by a notary in a small office in Greenwich. The notary's name is on the 2nd page. I made some calls this morning. The notary has since retired and moved away. He has not answered his phone recently. Victor set the page down slowly. "Isabel was in Greenwich recently for a fundraiser. I remember because she came home and showed me the photographs." "Yes," Philip said. "And the day before, the fundraiser, according to the notary's log, you signed this document. I was out of the country that day." The 2 men looked at each other across the small table. The coffee shop hummed quietly around them. Someone laughed at the counter. A spoon clinked against a cup. "Philip," Victor said, "I want to know everything. Who he is, where he comes from, how long this has been planned, and I want to know it before she does." Philip closed the leather folder and looked at Victor with the steady patience of a man who had spent his career delivering bad news in measured doses. "I already started," he said. "I have a private investigator who has worked for me for many years. Her name is Lila Monroe. She is very good and very quiet. I called her before I left my house this morning. She is already pulling records." "Good," Victor said. "What else?" "The insurance company will not pay out a claim without a body." Even with the accidental death rider, even with the simplified beneficiary clause, there has to be a death certificate, or in the absence of one, a court order declaring legal death after a missing persons case has been open for a specified period. In this state, that period is several years. So whatever they are planning, it does not end with you simply disappearing. It ends with you being found dead in a way that looks accidental. Victor absorbed this. The road outside Hartwick. The road outside Hartwick, Philip confirmed, where it bends along the reservoir. There have been several fatal accidents on that stretch over the years. The water there is deep. The current pulls toward the spillway. Cars have been recovered weeks later, sometimes longer. It is exactly the kind of location a man would choose if he wanted an accident to look like an accident. Victor did not say anything for a moment. They thought of everything, he said finally. They thought of most things, Philip corrected. They did not think of the boy. Victor's phone buzzed on the table. He looked down. The screen showed Isabel. He let it ring twice. Then he picked it up. Isabel. Victor, where are you? Her voice was no longer warm. It was not yet alarmed, but the warmth was gone. The driver called me. He says you walked past the car. He says you got into another car at the corner. What is going on? There was a problem with the car, Victor said calmly. I noticed something was off. A different driver, a different plate. I called the company and they had no record of the change. I thought it was safer to leave. I am with Philip now. We are sorting it out. There was a small silence. Victor could almost hear her mind working on the other end of the line. He could almost see the small calculations she was making, the same calculations she had probably made many times in recent times, weighing what she could say against what she could not, what she could explain against what would expose her. That is very strange, she said. Are you all right? I am fine. Do you want me to call the police? Not yet. Philip is handling it. The company is investigating. I will be home later. Victor! Her voice softened, became careful and tender in the way that he now understood was a kind of weapon. I am worried. Please come home. Whatever this is, we can figure it out together. I know we can, he said. I will see you soon. He ended the call and set the phone face down on the table. He looked at Philip. She does not know yet, Philip said. No. She knows the plan failed. She does not know I heard the recording. Good. Keep it that way for as long as you can. The longer she believes you suspect only the driver and not her, the more time we have to gather what we need. Victor nodded slowly. Then he looked toward the window of the coffee shop at Derek standing patiently by the door. There is a boy, he said, at the house. The one who told me. Yes. He went to his room. I told him to stay there, but his mother works in the house. The man I saw on the patio is gone now, but he will come back and Isabel will tell him what happened, and they will start looking for reasons. They will start looking for how the plan went wrong. They will look at the staff. They will look at the boy. Philip considered this. How many people work on the property? 6 full-time. The housekeeper, who is the boy's mother, the gardener, the cook, 2 security personnel, 1 assistant who handles the household scheduling. There are also contract workers who come and go. And the boy's mother. Does she live on the property? Yes, there is a small staff residence behind the south wing. She and her son have lived there for some time. Philip picked up his phone and dialed a number. He spoke quietly for less than a minute, then put the phone down. Lila will have someone watching the residence before long, he said. Unmarked. They will not interfere unless they need to, but they will be there. Thank you. There is something else you need to think about, Victor. Whoever this man is, whoever Isabel has been planning this with, he is not just a boyfriend. The level of planning, the access to your documents, the manipulation of your driver's schedule, the manufactured signature, the choice of location. This is not a man who fell in love with your wife and got carried away. This is a man with experience, with patience, with a method. He has done something like this before. or he has been close enough to people who have. Victor looked at the closed folder on the table. Then find him, he said. Find out who he is. Find out where he comes from, and find out who else he has done this to. Philip nodded. He gathered the folder, stood and rested one hand briefly on Victor's shoulder before walking out toward the front of the shop. Derek caught Victor's eye from across the room. Victor signaled him over. "Derek," he said, "I need to go back to the house. Not yet. Not today. But before this is finished, I will need to go back. And when I do, I need you to be the one driving." Derek nodded once. "I will be ready, sir." Victor looked out the window at the ordinary city continuing its ordinary morning. He had work to do. That afternoon, Victor checked into a small hotel on the north side of the city, the kind of place that catered to traveling consultants and did not ask questions about late check-ins or cash payments. Philip had chosen it. Philip had also paid for it under a different name, used a corporate card that did not appear on any of Victor's accounts, and arranged for a single room with a window facing the parking lot. Victor sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before he did anything else. He looked at the carpet. He looked at the small painting of a sailboat above the desk. He looked at the curtains, which were the color of old coffee. He had not stayed in a room like this in many years. He found, to his own surprise, that he did not mind it. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Philip. "Lila has a name, calling you shortly." Victor nodded to himself, even though there was no one in the room to see it. He stood up and walked to the window. The parking lot below was almost empty. A delivery van was idling near the back entrance. A woman was loading groceries into the trunk of a small sedan. The world continued without him. The phone rang. "Philip, Lila is on the line with us. She's going to walk you through what she found. Listen first, questions after." A new voice came through, low, calm, professional. "Mr. Langston, my name is Lila Monroe. I'm going to keep this brief, because we have a lot of ground to cover, and not much time. The man you saw on your patio this morning is named Adrian Holt. That is the name he is currently using. It is not the name he was born with." Victor sat down on the edge of the bed. "Go on," he said. "He was born Adrian Holt in Wisconsin. Following the death of his first wife, Margaret Holt, he changed his name legally. She was in her early 40s at the time of her death. She fell from a hiking trail in northern Michigan. There was an investigation. It was ruled accidental. She had a life insurance policy of several $1,000,000. He was the sole beneficiary." Victor closed his eyes. "Later," Lila continued, "he was engaged to a woman named Karen Ellis. She lived in Seattle. She was a software executive. She broke off the engagement some months before the wedding date. Her reasons are not in the public record, but she filed a restraining order a short while after the breakup. The order was granted. He left the state within a month. Then he married a woman named Renee Palmer in Phoenix. She was wealthy. She had no children. They were married for about 2 years. She died in a house fire. The fire department ruled it accidental. He was not home at the time. The insurance payout was several $1,000,000. Victor did not move. "And now," Lila said, "he is here with a new name, with your wife, with a very large policy and a stretch of road outside Hartwick." For a moment, no one on the line said anything. "Victor," Philip said finally, "does Isabel know any of this?" There was a small pause on the other end of the line. "I cannot answer that with certainty," Lila said, "but based on what I have seen so far, I would say no. The information about Adrian Holt's past is not easy to find. The name change was clean. The records are scattered across states. The only reason I found it as quickly as I did is because the notary in Greenwich, the one who has since retired and moved away, had handled paperwork for Adrian Holt once before in a real estate transaction. That gave me a thread to pull. Without that, it would have taken much longer." "Then she is also a victim," Philip said quietly. "She is also a participant," Victor replied. "Yes, both things can be true." Victor rubbed his hand slowly across his face. The cold and distant feeling, that had been holding him together since the morning was beginning to crack along its edges. He could feel it, the way a man feels the first small movement of a wall that has been about to fall for a long time. "What do we do?" he said.
"We have several options," Philip said. "We can go to the police now. We have the recording, the insurance documents, the false signature, the witness, the history on Holt. It is enough to open an investigation. They will arrest him within a day or so, possibly sooner. Isabel will be questioned. She will hire a lawyer. The case will move slowly, but it will move."
"What is the other option?" "The other option is more difficult and more dangerous. We give Holt another chance to act. We let him believe the plan can be salvaged. We watch where he goes. We listen to what he says. We catch him not just on intent, but on action. We catch him in a way that closes every door he might try to walk through." Victor looked at the small sailboat painting above the desk. He has done this at least twice before, and both times he walked away. "Yes, then we do it the second way," Victor said. "I do not want him to walk away again." Philip was silent for a long moment. "All right," he said. "Then we begin tonight." That evening, Victor returned to the house. Derek drove him through the front gate in the early evening, the way he had many times before. Victor sat in the back seat with his briefcase on his lap and his face composed in the careful neutrality he had practiced for a while in front of the small mirror in the hotel bathroom. Isabel was waiting for him at the front door. She had changed. She was wearing soft gray pants and a cream sweater, and her hair was pulled back the way she wore it when she did not want to look like she had tried. She came down the steps and took both of his hands. "Thank God," she said. "I have been worried sick all day." "I am all right," he said. "What happened with the car? Did you find out anything?" "The company is investigating. It looks like someone impersonated the dispatcher and routed the assignment. Philip thinks it may have been an attempted robbery. There have been a few of these in the city recently. Wealthy men, black cars. The drivers are sometimes paid off." He watched her face as he said it. He watched for the small flicker of relief that would tell him the explanation he had constructed was being absorbed exactly as he had intended. It came, a small softening around her eyes, a faint exhale she did not realize she had been holding. "That is horrible," she said. "I am so glad you noticed." "I almost didn't, but I did." She put her arms around him. He returned the embrace gently, the way he always had. He felt her breathing against his shoulder. He felt, for the first time in many hours, the specific sadness of holding a person who has decided you are worth more dead than alive. It was a sadness without sharp edges, slow and large and quiet, like a tide that had been coming in for a long time and only now was high enough to notice. "Come inside," she said. "I cooked your favorite. We can have a quiet evening." They had dinner at the long table. She lit candles. She poured him wine from a bottle he had bought some summers ago. She asked him questions about his day, about Philip, about the company's response, and he answered all of them in a calm and ordinary voice, giving her enough detail to seem honest and not enough to seem rehearsed. She listened, she nodded, she reached across the table once and touched his hand, and he let her. After dinner, she suggested they sit in the garden room. He agreed. They sat together on the long sofa, and she rested her head briefly on his shoulder, and he looked out through the tall windows at the dark shape of the patio, where she had sat that morning with another man and decided exactly when he would die. Later that evening, she said she was tired. She kissed his forehead and went upstairs. Victor waited a short while, then he stood up, walked quietly through the dark hallway to the back of the south wing, and let himself out the side door. The night air was cool. The staff residence was a small brick building tucked behind a hedge of boxwood, with 2 windows in the front and a single yellow light glowing above the door. He knocked softly. The housekeeper opened it. Her name was Clara. She had worked in the house for some time. She had a tired, intelligent face, and when she saw Victor standing on her doorstep late at night, she did not look surprised. She simply stepped back and let him in. "He is asleep," she said quietly. "He came home this morning saying his stomach hurt. He did not eat much at dinner. He fell asleep on the couch around 8. "May I see him?" She led him through the small front room, past a tidy kitchen with 2 clean cups drying on a towel, to a doorway at the back. Miles was curled on a narrow bed under a thin blue blanket. His shoes were on the floor beside him. His school bag was open on the chair with a notebook spilling out, the pages covered in small, careful drawings. Victor stood in the doorway and looked at him. "Clara," he said quietly without turning around. "I owe you the truth. Some of it tonight, the rest in a day or 2. Will you sit with me for a few minutes? For a few, She nodded and led him back to the small kitchen. They sat across from each other at a wooden table. She did not offer him tea. She did not waste motion on small things. She simply folded her hands and waited. He told her not everything, not the full history of Adrian Holt, not the recording in full detail, but enough. He told her that there had been a plan against his life that morning, that her son had warned him, that her son had almost certainly saved his life, and that the people behind the plan did not yet know that they had failed, in the way they had failed. Clara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat for a long moment with her hands still folded. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "Not this, but something. He has been quiet for some time. He has been drawing the same things on over and over. I asked him a few nights ago if anything had happened, and he said no. I should have asked harder." "He kept it from you to protect you," Victor said. "Not because he did not trust you." She nodded slowly. Her eyes were wet, but she did not let anything fall. "What do you need from me?" she said. "I need you to act in front of my wife, and anyone else, exactly as you have always acted. I need Miles to stay in this house with you until I tell you otherwise. There will be people watching the property. Quietly, you will not see them. They are there to keep you safe. And in the coming days, this will be over. And then," he said, "we talk about what comes next." The next 2 days passed slowly, the way a held breath passes. Victor moved through the house, the way he had always moved through it, with the calm and slightly distracted attention of a man whose mind was on his work. He took calls in his study. He ate breakfast at the small table by the window. He kissed his wife on the cheek when he passed her in the hallway. He smiled at the cook. He nodded at the gardener. He did not change a single small habit, because every habit was a piece of evidence in a story Isabel was reading, and any change would be a line out of place. 2 nights later, over dinner, he mentioned the trip. "I have to go to Hartwick in the morning," he said. "The meeting from earlier this week. They rescheduled it. I should have gone then. I cannot put it off again." Isabel looked at him across the candles. She did not react immediately. She took a small sip of her wine, set the glass down, and then nodded. "Of course," she said. "Is the company sending a different driver this time?" "Philip is arranging it through a new service. He says they have vetted everyone. Derek will be driving. I told the company I wanted him, specifically." "That sounds wise." "It is." She smiled at him. He smiled back. They both ate their dinner. Somewhere in the dark space between them, 2 plans were now moving forward at the same time, and only one of them knew that. The morning came clean and cold. Victor came downstairs at the usual time in a dark suit with his briefcase and his coat over his arm. Isabel was already in the kitchen. She handed him his coffee. She straightened his tie. She kissed him at the door. "Be safe," she said. "I will." The car at the gate was a black sedan, identical in model and color to the one from earlier. Derek was standing beside it in his dark jacket and cap, his left thumb resting on the door handle with the silver ring catching the early light. Victor walked to the car at his usual pace. He did not look at his phone. He looked at Derek. Derek gave him the smallest nod. Victor got into the back seat. Derek closed the door, walked around, and got into the front. The car pulled smoothly out of the driveway. For the first while, they drove in silence. They took the main road out of the city, then the highway north. The morning traffic was light. The sky was the color of pale slate. Derek's eyes moved to the rearview mirror. "They are behind us," he said quietly. "How many?" "One car, so far. A dark gray sedan. 2 men inside. They picked us up near the exit. They have been a few cars back since then. Lila's team is tracking them." Victor nodded. He looked out the side window at the trees beginning to turn along the edges of the highway. He thought about Adrian Holt, who had once stood in a courthouse and signed papers changing his name. He thought about Margaret Holt, who had gone for a hike one morning and never come home. He thought about Renee Palmer, who had bought a house and lit candles at dinner and gone to sleep one night and never woken up. He thought about Isabel, who at this moment was probably in the garden room with a cup of tea, waiting for a phone call that would tell her the worst day of her life had finally arrived. He did not feel rage. He had thought he would, but he did not. He felt something quieter, something harder to name. The way you feel when you watch a long sentence finally come to its period. Derek took the exit for Hartwick. The road narrowed. The trees grew closer to the shoulder. After another stretch, they came over a low rise, and the reservoir appeared on the left. A long, flat sheet of water, held in by a curving guardrail. The gray sedan was still behind them, a few cars back now. A third car appeared ahead, parked at a small turnout where the road bent along the water. As they drew closer, Victor could see the driver standing beside it, leaning casually against the door, his face turned away. He was the same man who had stood at the gate earlier. Same height, same dark jacket, same wrong hand on the door handle. "There he is," Derek said softly. "Keep driving past." Derek drove past. The man at the turnout straightened slightly as they went by, then turned and got into his car. In the side mirror, Victor watched the gray sedan, a few cars back, signal and slow. "Now," Victor said. Derek pressed a small button on the dashboard. 2 black SUVs that had been parked a short distance down the road pulled out and blocked both lanes. The gray sedan braked. The car from the turnout pulled out behind it and was immediately boxed in by a third unmarked vehicle that had been following from a side road. It happened very fast and very quietly. There were no sirens. There were no flashing lights yet. Men and women in plain clothes stepped out of the SUVs with calm and practiced efficiency. The gray sedan was opened. The 2 men inside were pulled out and put on the ground. The driver from the turnout was already out of his car with his hands raised. Derek pulled to the side of the road and stopped. He turned in his seat to look at Victor. "It is over," he said quietly. "No," Victor said, "not yet." He took out his phone and called Philip. "Philip, they have the men on the road. Tell Detective Harlan he can move on the house." Then he closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat just for a moment and listened to the wind moving over the surface of the reservoir. When Victor arrived back at the house an hour later, Derek driving slowly through the open gate, the front of the property was already filled with quiet activity. 2 unmarked cars sat near the steps. A pair of officers stood by the front door. Detective Harlan, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and the patient, watchful face of someone who had seen the worst of people and chosen not to be surprised by it anymore, was waiting for him on the front walk. "She did not run," the detective said quietly as Victor stepped out of the car. "She did not call anyone. She was sitting in the garden room when we came in. She looked at us for a long moment, and then she said only one thing." "What did she say?" "She said, 'He told me he had done this before.'" She said it twice, as if she needed to hear herself say it. Then she stood up and put her hands behind her back, without being asked. Victor nodded slowly. He did not feel triumph. He did not feel vindication. He felt, more than anything, a deep and ordinary tiredness. The kind a person feels at the end of a long journey that should never have been necessary. They led Isabel out of the house a few minutes later. She walked between 2 officers, her head not bowed, but not raised, her face neither defiant nor pleading. As she passed Victor on the front walk, she stopped for the briefest second. She did not speak. She only looked at him, and in that look, He saw, for one strange and final moment, the woman she had been many years ago in a small chapel, holding his hand. Then she walked on, and the officers helped her into the car, and the car drove away. Victor stood on the front walk for a long time after it was gone. The case moved faster than any of them expected. Adrian Holt was charged quickly with conspiracy, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and identity fraud. The earlier cases were reopened. New evidence was found in both. The driver from earlier made a deal and named everyone. The recording from a small cracked phone in a boy's pocket became the cornerstone of the prosecution. Isabel was charged as a co-conspirator. She did not contest the charges. Her lawyer told the court she wished to enter a plea. The judge accepted it. Victor did not attend most of the proceedings. He had been there once, at the first hearing, and that had been enough. There were some things he had decided a man did not need to watch twice to understand. In the weeks that followed, the house changed. Not in the way houses change after a death, but in the way houses change after a long fever finally breaks. Victor moved his bedroom to a smaller room on the east side, where the morning sun came in through clean windows. He sold the cars he did not use. He gave Derek a permanent position with the company, with a salary that made Derek argue with him for a while before accepting. He hired a new household manager, an older woman who had run a small bed and breakfast for many years, and the house began, for the first time in a long time, to feel like a place where people actually lived. Clara stayed. Victor had asked her if she wanted to, and she had taken a few days to think about it, and then she had said yes. She moved into a larger residence on the property, a small cottage with a real fireplace and a sunroom in the back. Miles enrolled in a new school in the fall. Victor paid for it, and for the one after it, and for whatever would come after that. He did not call it a gift. He called it an investment in someone who had already proven what kind of person he would become. Several months later, when spring arrived, Victor walked out into the garden one Saturday and found Miles sitting on the low stone wall near the greenhouse, a notebook open on his knees. He was drawing the new rose bushes that Clara had planted along the south fence. Victor sat down beside him. "You still draw," he said. "My dad used to draw," Miles said. "My mom told me he died when I was little. She said he drew on everything, receipts, napkins, the backs of bills." Victor had not known this. He nodded slowly. "Then you come by it honestly," he said. They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the wind move through the leaves. "Mr. Langston," Miles said quietly. "Yes? Do you ever still feel scared about that morning?" Victor thought about the question. He thought about it for a long time, because the boy deserved a real answer. "Sometimes," he said. "Not the way I felt it then. But sometimes I wake up at night and I remember the sound of the engine at the gate, and I think about how close I came to walking past you and not stopping. And what I feel then is not fear exactly. It is something more like gratitude that has not yet learned how to sit still." Miles nodded slowly. He understood in the way that children sometimes understand things adults cannot put into words. "My mom says," he said, "that doing the right thing does not always make your life easier, but it lets you look at yourself in the mirror without having to look away." Victor looked out across the garden at the greenhouse glowing softly in the spring light. "Your mom is right," he said. "She has been right about almost everything." This story is a reminder that the most dangerous threats in our lives rarely arrive as strangers. They wear familiar faces, share our dinners, and know our schedules. And it reminds us that courage does not come from size or status or wealth. A child with honesty and the will to speak can change the entire course of a powerful man's life. Always pay attention to the small things. Never look away from what you know is wrong. And never underestimate the difference one brave voice can make.